All right, everybody. Welcome to the episode of Muckin N Grindin. Got a little tidbits of Pens news. Jari DeSmith and Tanev will not be available tomorrow. Maxime Legacy will get the start in net for the Pens. Alex Dorio was called up from Wilkes-Barre. Most likely, Emil Larmy will be the backup tomorrow, most likely. Not exactly sure. There's been no definitive answer yet. Tanev is very hopeful for the start of the playoffs. He's ready to go. Jari and DeSmith are just, I think it's just to give him a little bit of a rest before the start of the playoffs. Little tidbits, the end of the first, the Stars and Lightning. Stars are up 1-0. Former Penn Jamie Alexiak with the goal. Game that everybody's kind of watching around here locally for the Penn's sake is the Flyers and Caps. The end of the first 1-1, Joel Farabee for the Flyers and former Penn Daniel Sprong for the Caps. Wings and Jackets. Jackets are up 1-0 at the end of the first. Ducks are at the Wild later. Blues at Golden Knights later. And congratulations to the Flower, Marc-Andre Fleury, and the moving to the third all-time with 490 wins. He's got a long way to go to catch Marty Broderi's. I think he's like 200 and some game wins away from him. But congratulations to Fleury nonetheless. Great storied career, definitely a Hall of Famer. It'd been just really interesting to see what would have transpired if he would have, stayed here instead of Matt Murray getting the nod. It's kind of odd, like Matt Murray going to Ottawa, playing games, get injured, and then gets replaced by former Penguin draft pick Philip Gustafson up there. Now he's got the starting nod right now, but they're flipping back and forth with goaltenders. Avalanche at the Kings later, and the Coyotes at the Sharks as your late night tip at 10:30. Standings wise, it's still kind of odd, and it's a little difficult to say. Some teams have clinched playoff spots, but positioning is still up for grabs in the Central Division. Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Florida have all clinched. Carolina, surprisingly, looks like they're going to be the President's Trophy winners with 80 points, which is not shocking to me because the Chicago, Columbus, and Detroit are bottom dwellers in the division. When you feed off of that, I mean, it doesn't help. When you have more than two teams under 500 in your division, I mean, you can stockpile points. The fourth seed right now, Nashville's up four points on Dallas. Dallas has a game in hand on them. Nashville has 2 games left. Dallas has 3. So that fourth position is not a guarantee for Nashville right now. Chicago has 2 games left. They have 52 points, so they're pretty much out. In the Western Division, you got the Vegas Golden Knights leading with 76 points. Colorado was 72, and Minnesota was 71. All have clinched playoff spots. St. Louis has 5 games left to play. They're pretty much locked in that fourth position. They are 6 points ahead of Arizona, who has 2 games left. Not much to say there. We'll come back to the Pens division last. Toronto, Edmonton, and Winnipeg are all locked into the playoffs as of right now. Montreal's got a 10-point cushion on Calgary. Montreal has 3 games left to play. Calgary has 5. But honestly, Winnipeg has a game in hand on Montreal, so the positioning, why Toronto's locked up the 1 seed, the 2 seed is Edmonton, the 3 and 4 seeds will be Winnipeg and Montreal, but we're not exactly sure yet if Winnipeg will be the 3 seed or Montreal will be the 4th seed. Go back up to the Pens. We have the Pens right now leading with 75 points. Washington, Boston, and the Islanders. Everybody has clinched the division, the playoffs division. Pittsburgh's leading the division with 75 points, like I said. Washington's got 73 in there in a matchup right now, tied 1-1 with Philly. Boston has 71 points. Washington and Boston, after tonight, will have 2 games left. The Penguins will have 1 game left against Buffalo. The Islanders have 2 games left, and they have 68 points. So, I mean, honestly, if you look at it, Boston and the Islanders could switch hands. But with Boston having 3 games after tonight, having 2 games left, and Washington having 2 games left, for the painful process of cheering for the Philadelphia Flyers in these 2 games versus Washington is very painful. Excuse me, but we're pulling for them because I'd rather have a home ice advantage versus either Boston or New York. We'll move on to statistical leaders because this is stats are one of my favorite things to check out. I just go with forwards. Goaltending's this year has been a little askew because of, some of the teams, like some guys have a great goal. Like speaking of Philip Gustafson, former Penguin draft pick, has a 187 goals against average, which puts him third in the league. But he's only got a few starts, so I kind of dismiss it. We're going to go to the statistical leaders. Connor McDavid is on an unbelievable pace. The only person who has scored 100 points in 56 games, there was a small list. Mario Lemieux did it twice. He did it once, I think it said in 32 games, and then once in 35 games. 100 points in 30-some games. That's like 4 points a game. That's unheard of. And then Gretzky's done it in like 50-some games every time he's done it. But that just shows you how much better Lemieux was then. And without the injuries and cancer and not being surrounded by Hall of Famers, was just it just made him, I think he was the best. Bobby Orr's up there too. I take Gretzky. Gretzky was a great player, yes, but being surrounded by Yari Curry, Kevin Lowe, Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, these guys are all Hall of Famers. So and they were good before Gretzky got there. So, he made them better, yes, but did they make him better also? Yes, because like everywhere Gretzky's gone, he's ended up being surrounded by Hall of Famers. So, but as of right now, with 52 games played by the stats, Connor McDavid's has run away with the scoring title with 96 points. Leon Draisaitl, his teammate, was 77. Mitch Marner was 66. Nathan McKinnon was 65. Brad Marchand was 65. Patrick Kane was 64. Austin Matthews was 64. And your Penguins' 8th, Mr. Sidney Crosby at 62 points. Goal leaders is Austin Matthews with 40. McDavid with 31, Alex DeBrincat with 29, Mikko Rantanen with 29, Tyler Toffoli with 28, Leon Draisaitl with 28. But just the points alone, it just blows me away that Connor McDavid having 96 points and Draisaitl was 77, and then still being kind of middle of the road. I always said that Edmonton and Calgary both were great goaltenders away from being 2 of the best teams in the NHL, but they just can't seem to find the right goaltender to go with. They need one of those showstoppers, and they really haven't come across one. Let's see. Rookies, Kirill Kaprizov. Kirill the Thrill, they call him there in Minnesota. He's the leading rookie point getter with 47 points. Tim Stützle has 26. Josh Norris has 33. Jason Robertson with 43. Penguins don't really have anybody close. Defenseman among points, number one is Adam Fox right now with 47. Tyson Barrie in Edmonton with 45, and Chris Letang with 45. Victor Hedman and John Carlson both have 42 or 44 points respectively, and Dougie Hamilton has 42 along with Shea Theodore. Norris Trophy candidates, I saw grumbling on Twitter earlier that it was Fox, Barrie, Hedman, and Carlson and Hamilton. Letang's name actually wasn't even on the list, which was kind of not a surprise because I think a lot, like the whole body of work is what they need to go by. There's a lot of times where Letang leaves his partner out to dry. Not that any other defenseman does not do that. Excuse me. But yeah, it's just one of those things. If he ends up leading, if he gets 3 or 4 points tomorrow at 3:00 versus Buffalo, we'll see what happens and see how that goes. Some of the cool things to look forward to is we'll have a week of nothing really except makeup games for like teams like Vancouver and stuff like that for the next couple of days before the playoffs start, and then they'll come up with the playoff schedule, like who's playing what time and everything like that. So right now we're still in a holding pattern of who's going to be doing what and who's playing who and what time and what date. The Pens seem to be, had that one hiccup game against Philly, which is not a surprise because that's one of the things that they always do. Philadelphia always plays them tough. But then they bounce back and score some, put up big numbers, 7 against them. And then yesterday with Jeff Carter having 4 goals, the last Pens, I think, to have 4 goals in a game, where Mark Recchi did it twice, over the age of 35, I should say. Mark Recchi did it twice, and Schenkel did it back, and this was back in the late 60s, early 70s. He did it also back then. But, Jeff Carter's a decent player. The backhand goal was, I think, the most impressive out of the group of goals that he had. And it seems that line of Jared McCann, Jeff Carter, and Freddie Gaudreau has clicked, and they've found something there that is something to look forward to. I mean, and then you can put your fourth line back together of Teddy Bluger, Aston Reese, and Brandon Tanev, put them back together. Your second line with Malkin, Kapanen, and Zucker. First line is Rust, Gensel, and Crosby. I mean, and Mark Friedman filling in right now for Mike Matheson, who took a puck to the face the other day. He said he's out week to week. Friedman's not a bad player. He's got decent speed. He's not afraid to use the body. He's got good hands for a defenseman. He kind of fills in that place with Matheson pretty well. We'll just have to wait to see. Hopefully Matheson will be back sooner rather than later. The game tomorrow it does mean something, but it doesn't mean anything. I think either way, the Pens are just kind of going to chalk it up as okay, we lose this one, we lose it, we win it. I hope that everybody, I'm tired. It was a long work week. Everybody comes out healthy and but yeah, we'll do another show here right as soon as we have the matchups and playoff seating set. We'll do another show, and then after the Pens games, we will do recaps of short, like 5 to 10 minute recap shows of the Pens game with the 3 stars of the game and regular stats, kind of like we did last year. We'll hit it from there. As of right now, we're just waiting on everybody to finish up the season, get it over with, get the playoffs started, because that's the best part of the season. And not long after that, as soon as the cup is raised by that team, shortly after that, the Seattle Kraken will be doing the expansion draft. A week later, I'm pretty sure it may not even be a week. It might be like 4 or 5 days later. The entry draft is right after that. And then right after that, it's free agency starts. So it's going to be a short off season, front office wise. But it's exciting to see. I don't really want to get into the Tom Wilson crap that went on the other day. I'm not a big fan of the line brawl that ensued at the next game. I would just rather have seen somebody and Tom Wilson go back and forth themselves and not have a line brawl. It's just not necessary anymore. We're not in those days. I mean, you got, scoring wingers sitting there throwing punches at each other, and if one of them happens to break their hand, you never know. Granted, I did not like what Tom Wilson did to Buchnevich and Artemi Panarin. It's uncalled for, unnecessary. A $5,000 fine was a joke. This is why Mario Lemieux said back in the day, it's the best sport, worst league. It's a garage league. It's terrible. George Peros from Washington County, PA himself, who scored 18 goals in his flipping career and had 136 fights in his career, is the guy for NHL player safety. I mean, it was just as bad when Colin Campbell was the player safety guy, and he was a dirtbag player when he played. He even played for the Pens and played for a couple other teams and stuff like that back in the early 70s. You can't have garbage guys be your guys for NHL player safety. You got to think that through a little bit better. Maybe have a guy that has a little bit more respect for the game. Maybe a Nicholas Lidstrom. Why not have a guy like that who has respectability be the face of player safety and go on a better route? I will say this. I remember Matt Cook was one of those guys that took runs and cheap shots and, dirty plays everywhere. The Pens pulled him aside and said, look, either you play right or you're gone and nobody's going to re-sign you. Well, Matt Cook ended up playing great with Stahl and Kennedy. Help win a cup. Tom Wilson is one of those players. He is a great hockey player. I shouldn't say great. He's a very good hockey player. He's a 30-goal season guy. He's got great skill, and nothing's wrong with laying the body into somebody now and then, hitting them, clean. But when you start throwing the dirty annex into it, kind of like Brad Marchand, dirty player, TJ Oshie is another one. Great player, dirty behind the play. Don't need to do that stuff. It's just not in the game anymore. It's not necessary. And then you suspend Shane Gostisbehere for cross-checking Mark Friedman after he scored an empty net goal. You suspend him 2 games. What message does that send? It says, oh, well, you can go ahead and body slam this guy and punch a guy in the back of the head and cross-check him in the back of the head, hold his face down to the ice. But you can't bump a guy from behind and push him into the boards after he scores a goal. But you can go ahead and go apeshit and flip out and throw people around. It doesn't work that way. I'm not a fan of it. I'm a fan of, when somebody didn't like what Tom Wilson did, and this went back a couple of years ago to the Stanley Cup Finals versus Vegas, right? Tom Wilson took a run at, I think it was Jonathan Marchessault. Next shift, Tom Wilson was out there. Ryan Reeves was out there, and he beat the piss out of him. That's how you fix it. Tom Wilson didn't do it the rest of that game. But the dumb part of Gerard Gallant did was bench Ryan Reeves pretty much the rest of that series, and it cost him because nobody was keeping Tom Wilson in check because Ryan Reeves was not in the lineup. But I digress. Let's hope that the Pens finish on tomorrow's game healthy, and we'll get back at it as soon as we have a schedule set and when we will be playing and who we will be playing, we'll come back on and we'll do another show. But until then, thanks everybody. Have a good weekend. Enjoy tomorrow's game, the Pens and Sabres at 3:00. Have a good weekend.